So my name is Marc Neumann, and I'm a Ikerbasque Research Professor at BC3, and I arrived in 2012. Since February this year, I'm leading the adaptation research line of BC3, and my background is actually in environmental engineering, and with the first degree in rural engineering, which is a kind of a mixture of civil engineering, forestry, agronomy, environmental engineering, geomatics, and then I did a PhD in environmental engineering, focusing on urban water systems. Urban water systems.
Water.
How water moves through a city. So everything that happens when you open the tap, everything that's happened previously to the water arriving at your tap, and as the water goes down through the sink, everything that happens to the water before arriving back to the river. I was born in Bern, which is the capital of Switzerland. I moved to Canada for 3 years, to the eastern part of Canada, to Quebec, and worked there in wastewater engineering. A lot of work also in collaboration with practitioners from both Canada and from the USA, with quite a lot of travel also in North America. So that was really interesting, living on another continent and getting to know a different way of life and thinking about things. And that's about 7 years ago, in October 2012, I started here.
Have you got, when you kind of look back on your childhood, any light bulb moments, that really you could say, oh, that's when I knew I'd take this career?
Oh, yes, yeah, actually. Well, actually, what is interesting, in general, there's maybe two things. So one is, I joined the World Wildlife Fund when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I think one of the main triggers of that was the news of the Amazon rainforest being cut down. So that was in the very early 80s. So that was one moment. So I can remember joining World Wildlife Fund and selling their stamps, going around the neighbors and selling the stamps and basically collecting money for them and being really interested in that. And so that was one kind of a light bulb moment.
Oh, that's lovely.
And I think also, and that's maybe less just of a single light bulb, but I can remember we had teachers that were very conscientious about processes happening in society and also about the environment and environmental protection. So I can remember that there were various topics that were kind of present. So droughts in Africa, I can remember that. Also climate change, the first discussions, or the first let's say that this was a topic that was starting to become was arising in the public sphere, the ozone depletion of the ozone layer, the local air pollution, the dying back of forests in Central Europe. So there were kind of various topics of environmental degradation. There was the accident in Schweizer Halle, a chemical accident that contaminated the Rhine. So yeah, there was these various things happening at the same time, and I think by having teachers that were quite conscientious and wanting to transmit that, and maybe being quite sensitive to that information that was around, that was, I would definitely say that those were like also triggers to later take on a career related to the environment.
Could you say something about how you do like work in the field, physical work, as opposed to data collection, which is kind of like graphs and just...
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm actually more theoretical. My work is more theoretical. We had in the PhD, we had people who were experimental, there were people who were doing half-half, and there was people doing just theoretical. I was in just theoretical. I think in my 5 years of PhD, I did 1 year of 1 day of field work, compared to others that were doing half the time, or maybe even like up to 70%, or yes, working on pilot scale reactors and things like this. But so my work was more theoretical. So I was taking data more from the people had gathered for other studies, and then used them in my analysis. Yeah, that's sometimes I'm missing that. I'm sometimes envious of the people like David that you just interviewed before, that have a very strong connection to the field and spend a lot of time in the forests or out in nature. That's what I have a quote there that relates to that point.
Okay. We're asking everyone about which elements their practice sits in. I mean, obviously it sounds like water, but earth, air, fire, space, water. But you couldn't. It'd be interesting what you say.
Well, I think I come from the water aspects. So the water management has been kind of a constant line through my career.
Is it about space as well, as you're dealing with a lot of theoretical? Yes,
yeah, exactly. I mean, from that point of view, I mean, all the modeling work is something that really happens in a kind of empty space. It's conceptualizations of what is happening in reality. So moving water or chemical transformation happening in water expressed through mathematical equations. I think with the connection to environment, I think for me, like a good entry point normally, which I realize also here in society in general, is water engineering. And explaining the way I did before about the opening the tap.
That's beautiful.
And you see the water running, and then the thought of what's happened before, like where is it coming from? What processes is it going through? And then what happens when it goes down the sink until it arrives back to the river. So I think that is, at all, for people with all different backgrounds, all different age levels, is something that you can engage very quickly. So this is much easier than starting on something with uncertainty analysis for mathematical models of climate change mitigation, with people's eyes glaze over quite quickly. So I think the engineering is also something that is very tangible. You can explain something like purifying water or treating wastewater. And sometimes people also that have read something like, the pharmaceuticals in the water, the hormones in the water, and this. So you can connect to that and quite easily.
Yeah. Thank you. Could you say something about beauty in your area?
Beauty in my area.
Yeah, just like, or how you've experienced it, or
with water in general, you always have that aspect connecting it back to nature. So you have like a place somewhere in the mountains where you have a natural spring, and that is a pristine environment that is very beautiful, and there's kind of images that we have that we are trying to once it has gone through all this cycle of having it go, returning it back to a place where you again would be able to experience beauty in that sense. And then I think sometimes also just in the aesthetics of the work of a scientist, that you have this curiosity-driven work, and then again that referring back to space, that also in interaction with other people, where if there's space and relaxation and you're having a discussion about something and this ideas emerge, which is, I would like describe that also as like beautiful moments.
Lovely, thank you. Have you got a symbol that could represent, or anything that comes to mind, kind of symbolic?
Of representing my work?
Yeah, because I mean, I'm always working with symbols as an artist. It's, like in protest movements, symbols emerge and they take hold in public, in the consciousness.
I think that is something that we are, like also, myself, that we're not so aware of. And I realize this sometimes in, like when you're interacting on a topic like, especially climate change mitigation, like the need to reduce emissions, and sometimes you're talking to people and you see like their eyes glazing over, and like you're not connecting. And then I don't know, we have recently this like new phenomena of Greta Thunberg.
Yeah.
Who was addressing the members of European Parliament.
Yeah.
And there was such a strong reaction, and you realize, like, I've been saying the same, I don't know, maybe like 3 years ago, like to people, and this closing, and so you realize that there must be, there's like there are channels that we are not activating as scientists, because we're so focused on the, I don't know, maybe on the facts or the description of the physical processes, and we do see this need of climate change action, and we even have models of what this could look like, but then having like this emotional connection to really transmit that message, I think we are. Yeah, we're often lacking. I think we're also aware that we've not got that process. So
it could be that you're talking about like a listening symbol, a symbol that's about listening somehow, because that's what you need. You need to be listened to.
Yeah, to be listened to. Yeah.
So, because I was thinking, because she wears a jacket, doesn't she? Listen to the science.
Yeah, that's what she said. Yeah, she's sending them to us. No, really.
Yeah.
But then we have to be maybe.
And I thought that's what we're doing. We're going to listen to them, Yeah.
How do we? Yeah.
The symbol is listening, because it doesn't have to be visual. It could be, like someone earlier today. We ended up realising it was about smells. It was. Because she was talking, the first person, Rose in the Colour of Flame. She was saying that she remembered the smell of petrol. Really affected her as a child.
That's interesting.
And then that was really useful to us, because we could use like perfumes, and some are horrible smelling, as to trigger things. It can.
Yeah, the triggering. I think the triggering is a good word.
Yeah, it's so it doesn't have to be visual. It's yeah.
I mean, sometimes things are very. It sounds also very abstract. I mean, and that's because I've worked also, and that was quite interesting. Although I'm leading the adaptation research line currently, I work quite a bit with the people on mitigation. So there's the two sides of the coin of climate change. One is, how do we adapt to a changing climate? That's climate change adaptation. And the other one, mitigation, is how do we prevent dangerous climate change? So how do we avoid future emissions, future greenhouse gas emissions?
Those two questions. That's really good.
So it's two sides of the same coin, and often we're just looking at one one side at a time. And then when we do speak of mitigation, and this is quite a difficult, I mean, I've been working in environmental engineering, and compared to other challenges of environmental engineering, this one is quite difficult because it's global, and it happens at very large time frames, and it happens with delay. So it's actually the current emissions that are going to cause problems in 50 years or 80 years from now. And so we're not actually, in some way the climate signals that we are seeing are quite small compared to what is installed for us down the line if emissions continue to rise. So it gets a bit abstract saying this, well, we need to act now to avoid worse problems in the future. So that's already starting to sound quite abstract, or then we have to say things like, well, we need to reduce. So currently emissions are increasing between 1% and 2% per year. We should be reducing 8% per year in the next 10 years, during the next 10 years. There's again numbers that sound quite abstract, and this, well, 8%, reducing 8% per year, how do I relate to that? And
because I was going to ask you, what changes in society would you like to see, or what changes can an individual do? And you're saying that now. In practical terms, what, as Sam,
Well, I mean, the one is on the individual lifestyles, to try and move towards lifestyles that are that have smaller footprints. And I would say we talk of these footprints, like carbon footprints, but not only carbon footprints, but also other environmental footprints. So in general, lifestyles that are less material intensive, less energy intensive. You have also always that idea of transition or changing from fossil fuel to renewable energies. But then also I think this is also a bit of a difficulty. I don't think it can all happen bottom up just from individuals. So it's also in that sense individuals that either demand governments to act in the sense of having top-down measures, to have regulation, or to have things like carbon taxes that are mandated by the state. That you could do, through voting or through becoming politically active yourself. The thing is to be in what they call a safe space. So, climate. Well, we have these how many degrees can climate change or warm compared to pre-industrial levels. So we're now at the 1 degree warming currently compared to pre-1850. And so there's this idea, there's a safe level would be a 2 degree warming by 2100, so another 1 degree, or maybe even 1.5 degrees. But we're on track for something that is, above 4 degrees or above 5 degrees. So really there's the strong action that has to happen really soon to be able to reach these safe levels. And the time constants are a bit worrying. So that window that is starting now and is very short to be having to really be reducing emissions. And so it is really globally a new challenge.
I have been asking everyone how they deal with the prognosis personally. Because that just sounds, it's really soul destroying, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think I would say that like I've become a bit more positive in the last like year and a half. That there's suddenly been quite a lot of movement and awareness. I'm also quite positive in one sense of sometimes when you look back in history, so you go back in time and then you look forward in the sense of what was, you know, predicted to happen and what actually happened, that this sometimes can be very different. So that the, you know, that the envelope in which the future can take place might be wider than we are, than we think is possible. So, you know, I don't know, this like word of positive disruption, that there could be changes coming up soon that we cannot conceive of. Is, well, I think is something that like just to be aware of, that is possible. We did reviewed some literature on what what drives awareness about climate change. And it is known from literature that people that are experiencing events, you know, extreme weather events that might or might not be related to climate change, but that are actually suffering or who have suffered personally in flood events or drought events, or you know, being big victims in storms, that the engagement increases significantly to do something. Sometimes relating to that point on the you know, the rational, it would be like the rational decision to make, you know, to prevent the suffering. The problem with climate change, I think, is that it is not so direct. That there are, I don't know, people that are maybe profiting from the system as it is now, currently, and they might be in their, I don't know, 60s, 70s, 80s, who are very wealthy, who are not going to suffer, or are not really going to witness that.